owe these beautiful images, all that were taken at national parks, to our 26th President, Theodore Roosevelt. President Roosevelt utilized his natural inclinations towards loving nature, and he used this passion to save Yellowstone National Park, as well as utilize groundbreaking legislation to create national monuments that went on to be national parks. So let me tell you a little bit about Theodore Roosevelt's beginnings and how a little sickly boy came to be such a hero for American conservation. So this is Theodore Roosevelt. He was actually very sick. He had asthma for a long time, and they didn't really have medication for asthma at that time. His family was robust. They liked to go hiking and do other things. I do want to mention, though, that after I finish this speech, I have no doubt that you will see the connection between the national parks that we have today and Theodore Roosevelt's legacy. Now back to him as a child. He was a bit sickly, so what he used to express his love for nature was taxidermy. He shot and killed and preserved hundreds of bird species. In fact, between the ages of 12 and about 24, he donated pristinely preserved specimens of about over 600 to 2 national museums. So this tells you about his love and his passion for things of nature. Also, as a young adult, he owned a buffalo ranch in North Dakota. Now, he owned this before the passing of his wife, but he actually saw the healing power of nature and working the land and all things beautiful in the West after his mother and his wife died on February 12th, 1884, on the same day. So after that day, to console himself in grief, he left the East, where he was from, and went to the West just to work the land and to kind of be healed from it. Now, let's talk a little bit about his relationship to Yellowstone National Park. This is a direct quote from Theodore Roosevelt. "So far from having this Yellowstone Park cut down, it should be extended and legislation adopted which would enable the military authorities to punish in the most vigorous way people who trespass upon it." These words tell you a little bit about his passion for Yellowstone. He did more than just speak about it. He petitioned for it. He petitioned for its expansion as well as its protection. He was actually the president and co-founder of a group called the Boone and Crockett Club. This was a gentleman's hunting club, and he actually co-founded it with George Bird Grinnell. And he was actually, among other things, the founder of the Audubon Society.
Oh, really?
So this group not only petitioned for Yellowstone, they also founded the New York Zoological Society, and they campaigned for fair nighttime hunting of deer, and also as well as for Yellowstone. So he was in the thick of thin writing petitions for Yellowstone to be extended as well as protected, but his efforts weren't as successful as he liked. But in 1894 there was a breakthrough, and he was a part of that as well. In 1894 there was an act that was passed up for the protection of Yellowstone. It was called the Act to Protect the Birds and Animals in Yellowstone National Park. And it came about after someone who was poaching buffaloes was caught, and there was nothing that the authorities could really do to him besides give him a small fine. And so there was a need, and they knew there was a need to protect Yellowstone more, and this bill was passed within 2 months of that incident after years of lobbying. Now at this time, President Roosevelt was actually the Civil Service Commissioner for the federal government, and he lobbied with the people that he knew and wined and dined them just so that he could get their support for this legislature. Now in 1903, he visited Yellowstone again, so that's a little bit over 10 years, and he was the president at this time. He took 2 weeks to camp in there, And he saw the success of that motion. He saw the success of what he and his colleagues had done. And in fact, he also dedicated a cornerstone of an arch that is named after him at Yellowstone in 1903, and it still stands today. Now, National Geographic and the National Park Service has noted in their current issue that Yellowstone National Park, as well as another neighboring park close, has an annual visit of over 9 million people coming to that park. Alrighty, so how else was President Roosevelt a champion for our national parks? This act, the Antiquities Act of 1906, was the deal breaker for it all. I'm going to quote to you from this act in Section 2. The President may, and I quote, declare by public proclamation historic landmarks, historic and prehistoric structures, and other objects of historic or scientific interest as national monuments. So this act gave the President the authority, without having to go through Congress, to name different parts of the United States as national monuments. And Theodore Roosevelt did that aggressively. In fact, let's see, let me go back. Okay, on this chart I'll show you, these are the number of original monuments that presidents have made. President Obama has made 21 in his tenure. President Clinton made 19 original monuments. Theodore Roosevelt made 18. So he was the first president to utilize it, and he's number 3 on the list. So it shows you how aggressive he was at the start of this to do this. Now, most national parks today were national monuments before. So he utilized that legislature to create a lot of the national parks, particularly Grand Canyon was a prime example of that. It was a national monument. So I'm going to quote from Terry Tempest Williams, who was a writer and environmentalist. She says, "Our national parks are not only our best idea, but our highest ideal of what it means to live with an enduring legacy." And I think that you all will agree with me that Theodore Roosevelt did just that. His enduring legacy is the national parks, along with all the other conservation efforts that he did do. But right now, this map that I have here has, and this was made in 2011 from the National Park Service. It has 300 monuments, parks, and historic sites in the United States. So this is, I believe, an enduring legacy of what Theodore Roosevelt attempted to achieve. And I would also, as I close, invite you all to visit your national parks, as the National Park Service is celebrating their 100th year of existence.
Wow. Great.
Thank you. All right.
Your name?
My name is Tanisha Ozuatuegwu, and this speech is an informative speech for CS2 100.